is the historical issue here then that you think that this claim that the Messiah had been raised was kind of a post facto kind of sort of rationalization of these experiences they had?
They thought he was the Messiah before he died, in my judgment.
Right, so they did think he was the Messiah.
They weren't expecting him to die.
Right.
He died. One of them, two of them, three of them said, "I've seen the Lord." And then they had to figure out, well, how does that work? And it must mean, if he's alive again, it must mean that God's raised him from the dead.
But there were other...
These are apocalyptic Jews. Apocalyptic Jews, the only way they can imagine life after death is an embodied existence. They don't believe the soul lives on after death. These are Jews. Jews believe that the body and soul are one thing, and that afterlife, if there is an afterlife, it's body and soul. That if they see Jesus alive afterwards, it must mean that his soul has come back into his body. How does that happen? It can only happen when God does it.
Okay.
God has raised him from the dead. Once they say they raised him from the dead and they already knew he was the Messiah, that's when they start saying the Messiah was raised.
Quick response and we'll go to a break and then we'll...
I was just going to say, but there's other categories that they could have, as Jews, thought of. The Maccabees died horrible deaths, and they believed they lived on, exalted in the heaven. And they, you have many other examples of this kind of disembodied continuing to live on, but they will rise again at the final resurrection. But what the early Christians said is that Jesus had risen again now. The resurrection had already begun. Bart agrees with that. But where did that idea come from? That's the unexpectedness.
Yeah, it came from
it's
apocalyptic
completely unexpected.
Judaism.
Right. But you're saying they put it together. You're saying they're the geniuses who put this innovative, unparalleled idea that has changed the world. That all goes back to the brain of Mary Magdalene?
I'm changing the world has nothing to do with it. The issue is, what does an apocalyptic Jew...
It did change the world, though, right?
What does an apocalyptic Jew think if they see somebody who had died, who's alive now? Now, when you see your grandmother in your bedroom 2 weeks after she died, typically today, this happens a lot, 1 out of 8 people in our country have a vision of a deceased loved one and are convinced they're alive again or that they're alive. In our context, we believe that the body and the soul are separable, and the soul lives on afterwards. So when you see your grandmother in your bedroom, as 1 out of 8 people, not necessarily your grandmother, but some beloved one, typically what you think is their soul's gone to heaven, they've come down to visit me. Because that's our mentality of an afterlife.
But
apocalypticists don't have that. They don't have that view. Their view is that if somebody's alive after they died, it has to be a resurrection because the soul doesn't exist outside the body. So when they see Jesus, he's got to have a soul back in the body, which means God has raised him from the dead. That's the first thing they know, and they don't have any theology about it. It's just, oh my God, he's come back from the dead, and then they work it out.
Quick response, and we'll go to our break.
No, Josephus, for example, definitely believes souls exist.
He's not an apocalyptic Jew.
Well, why not?
He's anti-apocalyptic. I don't know if you've studied Josephus. Josephus is famously anti-apocalyptic. We're talking about apocalyptic Jews.
Bart assumes that they just saw something, but he hasn't explained to us what they saw. And whatever they saw changed their complete worldview.
I don't know what you see when you see your grandmother either.
Okay, but I definitely don't say she's raised from the dead.
You say she's still alive.
Well, but she's still dead, though, right?
In Jesus' case, my point is...
in our case, if you're going to use that parallel, in our case, when we see someone in the afterlife, yes, we think they're still alive in heaven, but we say they're dead here on earth.
We say their body is dead.
That's not what the early Christians said.
That's right.
They said Jesus had risen from the dead.
Right. So you need to
listen. A crucified man had risen from the dead.
Yes, you need to listen to why that is. We say their body is dead and their soul is alive because we believe in the difference between the body and the soul. Apocalyptic Jews did not. They could not say that his soul is still living because his body can't be alive unless his soul comes back into it. They don't have our view of the separation of body.
I disagree with you.
Well, look, we're going to take a break there.
Really?
We're going to take a break.
Okay, tell me some.
I'm going to take a break here, and we are going to just take a quick break, and we'll come back to this. We can keep going on the appearances. For early access to shows and for bonus content, register now at thebigconversation.show.